Before a new faith arrived, before the massive stone churches, what did our ancestors see when they looked at the world? They didn't just see rivers, mountains, and trees. They saw a world that was truly alive with spirits. A world where a supreme creator, Bathala, watched from the heavens, and every part of life was guided by a sacred connection to the unseen. This is the story of that spiritual world, a world that still echoes in Filipino culture today. To understand the soul of the pre-colonial Philippines is to get a feel for animism. For the hundreds of different ethnic groups across the islands, from the mountains of Luzon to the shores of the Visayas and Mindanao, the world wasn't some lifeless object to be conquered. It was a living, breathing thing, and it was full of consciousness. Every rock, every stream, every ancient tree, and every animal was believed to have its own life force, its own spirit. This belief system, which we now call Anitism, was the very foundation of their lives. This wasn't a world of empty landscapes. It was a parallel society of spirits, living right alongside the world of humans. These spirits, known as anito to the Tagalogs or diwata in the Visayas and Mindanao, were everywhere. They were the guardians of the forests, the keepers of the rivers, and the very spirit of the natural events that shaped daily life. Living was a constant negotiation, a delicate dance of respect and appeasement with these unseen forces. The rustling of leaves wasn't just the wind. It could be the whisper of a spirit. A sudden sickness wasn't just a biological event. It could be the price for disrespecting a sacred grove. This worldview created a deep, profound respect for nature. It was a partnership, not a dominion. The environment wasn't a resource to be exploited, but a sacred space to be honored. The ancient Filipinos saw themselves as just one part of a much larger, interconnected spiritual web. And this intricate relationship between the physical and the spiritual, between people and nature, was watched over by a pantheon of deities, all under the gaze of a single, supreme creator. His name, for the Tagalogs, was Bathala. At the very top of the Tagalog pantheon sat a being of immense power, Bathala, also known as Bathalang Maykapal, the creator. He was the source of everything, the supreme god who ruled from a celestial paradise of eternal peace called Kaluwálhatian. Unlike the unpredictable gods in many other mythologies, Bathala was seen as a kind, all-powerful, and all-knowing force. He was the grand caretaker of the universe he had brought into being. What did he look like? Well, descriptions varied. Some stories picture him as a giant, an ageless god with a flowing white beard, the very picture of wisdom. Others saw him as something more abstract, a formless presence beyond human understanding, the essence of life itself. The name Bathala probably comes from the Sanskrit word Batara, which means noble lord. It's a linguistic clue that points to the deep cultural and trade connections that crisscrossed Asia long before Europeans ever arrived. But for all his power, direct worship of Bathala was rare. He was considered too great, too distant for the daily worries of mortal life. The ancient Tagalogs believed that to reach the supreme creator, you had to go through intermediaries. He was a great lord in the sky, and you couldn't just talk to him directly. So instead, prayers, rituals, and offerings were made to the lesser spirits, the anitos, who acted as his ministers, carrying the pleas of humanity up to the heavens. But even though he was distant, Bathala wasn't uncaring. It was said he appointed a guardian spirit, also called a Bathala, to each child at birth, and spoke through omens and dreams, guiding his creation through the whispers of the spirit world. And the story of that creation is a testament to the drama and grandeur of the ancient Filipino imagination. The ancient Filipinos, like all cultures, wanted to answer the biggest question of all. Where did we come from? Their creation myths aren't just stories. They're sacred narratives that show a universe born from conflict, friendship, sacrifice, and divine creativity. One of the most powerful creation myths from the Tagalogs tells of a time when the universe held three powerful gods, each living alone and unaware of the others. There was Bathala, the caretaker of a rocky, empty earth, who dreamed of creating life. In the clouds lived Ulilang Kaluluwa, the orphaned spirit, a massive and terrifying serpent. And wandering the cosmos was Galang Kaluluwa, the wandering spirit, a beautiful winged head. In his loneliness, Ulilang Kaluluwa, the serpent, often came down to earth. One day, he met Bathala. Seeing a rival, the serpent's pride took over, and he challenged Bathala to a fight for control of the universe. For 3 days and 3 nights, they fought a titanic battle, until Bathala, with his greater strength, finally defeated the serpent. Instead of burying him, Bathala burned the serpent's remains. Years later, the winged head, Galang Kaluluwa, drifted into Bathala's kingdom. Bathala was wary of another rival, but was met with kindness instead. Galang Kaluluwa was a gentle and friendly god, and the two became the best of friends, their companionship filling the emptiness of their solitary lives. But their friendship was tragically short. Galang Kaluluwa fell ill. As he lay dying, he made one last request: to be buried on the very ground where Bathala had burned the body of their mutual enemy, Ulilang Kaluluwa. Bathala honored his friend's wish, and from the grave of these two rival gods, something amazing grew. A tall, slender tree with large leaves and a hard-shelled fruit, the first coconut tree. As Bathala looked at it, he saw his whole story reflected in its form. The hard, gnarled trunk was the body of the serpent Ulilang Kaluluwa. The graceful, feathery leaves were the wings of his dear friend, Galang Kaluluwa. And when he husked the nut, he saw a face that looked just like the winged head, with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. This tree, born from both hatred and love, became the ultimate gift to humanity. From its trunk and leaves, Bathala built the first house. From its meat and water, he provided the first food and drink. And with this gift, he was finally ready to create the first man and woman, giving them everything they needed to survive. A perfect symbol of life, emerging from death and chaos. Another famous myth tells of a world that began with only the sky, the sea, and a single sacred bird, often said to be the Tigmamanukin. Tired from flying forever, the bird stirred the sea into a rage against the sky. To hold back the churning water, the sky threw down massive boulders, which became the islands of the Philippines. From this clash of elements, a landscape was born, and Bathala could finally create life on it. These stories highlight a key idea. The world wasn't created peacefully, but through dramatic struggle, and nature itself is a sacred reminder of these divine events. While Bathala ruled from the heavens, the world of humans was the territory of countless spirits known as anito or diwata. This belief, Anitism, was the engine of everyday spiritual life. It recognized 3 main kinds of spirits, all existing in a complex hierarchy. First were the deities, the major gods and goddesses, who were often Bathala's children or other divine relatives. These included figures like Mayari, the beautiful goddess of the moon, Tala, the goddess of the stars, and Apoleki, the god of the sun and patron of warriors. These were powerful beings who governed the basic forces of the universe, the cycle of day and night, the seasons, and the tides. They were respected as cosmic powers who kept the world in balance under Bathala's grand design. Below them was a huge and diverse category of nature spirits. These were the true heart of animism, the spirits tied to specific places and things. They were the guardians of mountains, forests, rivers, and seas. Some were kind, offering protection and good harvests, while others were hostile or mischievous, causing sickness and bad luck to anyone who offended them. And these weren't just abstract forces. They had names and personalities that still echo in Filipino folklore today. The nuno sa punso was the old man of the anthill, a grumpy elder who might hide your things or make you sick if you disturbed his home. The dwende were small, goblin-like creatures who could bring you great luck or terrible misfortune. The ancesit of the Ilocanos were spirits living underground, angered by modern farm equipment that destroyed their homes. Then there were the engkanto, alluring and powerful spirits who guarded sacred natural places, sometimes appearing as beautiful people or strange, otherworldly beings. The relationship with these spirits was almost businesslike. They demanded respect, and if you gave them offerings and behaved properly, they might grant you favors. To ignore them was to risk their anger. The third category of anito was ancestral souls. The ancient Filipinos believed that when a person died, their soul, or Kaluluwa, could become an anito, a revered spirit who watched over their living family. These ancestral spirits weren't distant ghosts. They were active members of the family, acting as guides and protectors. Small wooden or stone figures, called tao-tao, were carved to represent and house these spirits, and they were found in almost every home, receiving offerings and prayers. The family wasn't just the living, it was a line stretching back into the spirit world, with the dead continuing to play a vital role in the lives of their descendants. This belief created a powerful bond between generations and a sense that you were never truly alone. Of course, a universe of light and creation must also have its shadows. The spiritual world of the ancient Tagalogs was not without its darker forces, figures who represented chaos, destruction, and pain. And chief among Bathala's adversaries was a powerful deity named Sitan. Sitan was the grim keeper of Kasanayan, an underworld realm of eternal grief and torment. This was the destination for the souls of the wicked, a place of punishment that existed in Tagalog belief long before the Christian concept of hell was introduced. Now, the name Sitan obviously sounds a lot like the Abrahamic Satan, and Spanish missionaries certainly used that similarity to make a connection. But scholars believe the core concept of a malevolent underworld ruler was already here before colonization, possibly influenced by early contact with Islamic traders who used a similar term. Sitan was seen as the master of demons, a being who actively tempted humans toward evil. To do his dirty work, Sitan had four main agents who brought misery to the human world. The first was Manggagawa, a fearsome witch who caused disease. She could disguise herself as a healer, only to inflict suffering with her magic. Next was Manisilat, the goddess of broken homes, who took a twisted pleasure in destroying happy families. The third agent was Mangkukulam, a male witch who could breathe fire and burn down the homes of his victims. And finally, there was Hukluban, a terrifying old woman who could kill with a single gesture of her hand and change her shape at will. Beyond Sitan and his agents, there was the memory of Bathala's first rival, the great serpent Ulilang Kaluluwa. As a being who once challenged the creator for control of the entire universe, he represents the raw, untamed chaos that existed before order was established. His defeat and transformation into the mountains and the trunk of the coconut tree serve as a permanent reminder that even within creation, the remnants of destruction can still be found. This duality, the benevolent creator and the malevolent spoiler, the world of light and the realm of darkness, formed a complete cosmology, one that recognized that both good and evil were fundamental forces in the universe. In a world so full of spirits, how did ordinary people navigate this complex web of respect, fear, and duty? They turned to their spiritual leaders, the shamans, who were the living bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. Among the Tagalogs, they were known as Catalonan, but they are most famously known today by the Visayan term babaylan. These figures, who were mostly women or effeminate men known as asog, held one of the most powerful and respected positions in pre-colonial society. They were right up there with the nobles and the village chief, the datu. The babaylan was the community's connection to the divine. She was a healer, a seer, a ritual specialist, and the keeper of sacred stories. It was believed she had spirit guides, known as abyan, who helped her travel to the spirit world during rituals and ceremonies. The babaylan's most important job was as a healer. Sickness was often thought to have a spiritual cause, a soul or kalag that had wandered off and gotten lost, or an attack by an evil spirit. It was the babaylan's duty to perform ceremonies to bring the lost soul back, or to fight off the offending spirit, using a mix of chants, offerings, and her knowledge of medicinal plants. They were also diviners, able to read omens in nature to predict the success of a harvest, the outcome of a battle, or the best time for a wedding. During a seance ritual, called paganito, the babaylan would enter a trance, allowing a deity or an ancestor's spirit to speak through her, offering guidance or warnings to the community. She was the voice of the spirits, the counselor to the chief, and the guardian of the village's spiritual health. The babaylan wasn't just a priestess. She was the living embodiment of the sacred connection that held her community together, a living testament to the belief that the worlds of spirit and humanity were not separate, but deeply and permanently intertwined. For the ancient Filipinos, spirituality wasn't something separate from the rest of life, saved for a special building or a certain day of the week. It was woven into the very fabric of their daily existence. Every action, from planting rice to building a home, from birth to death, was filled with ritual and spiritual meaning. The goal was to maintain harmony, to live in balance with the spirit world that was all around them. This constant awareness of the spirit world showed up in countless daily habits. When passing by a place believed to be a spirit's home, like a big old tree or an anthill, you would respectfully say, "Tabi, tabi po," a phrase asking for permission to pass, acknowledging the spirit's ownership of that space. Forgetting to do so was to risk offending the spirit and inviting bad luck. Rituals, called paganito or pagdiwata, were performed for nearly every important occasion. These ceremonies involved offerings, food, drinks, flowers, or even valuable fabrics and knives, laid out on small altars. The spirits would consume the spiritual essence of the offering, and then the physical food would be shared by the community in a celebratory feast. These rituals were held to ask for a good harvest, to cure a sickness, to ensure a safe journey, or to bless a new marriage. They were moments that blended a real fear of the spirits with the joy of community celebration. Even death was a spiritual event for the whole community. The souls of those who died violently, by a sword, lightning, or eaten by a crocodile, were believed to go directly to the heavenly realm of Kaluwálhatian by way of a rainbow. For others, the babaylan would perform elaborate rituals to guide the soul on its journey to the afterlife. Sacred animals and birds, like the white-collared kingfisher known as the tigmamanukin, were seen as omens sent by the gods, their songs and flight patterns carefully read for signs of good or bad fortune. Crocodiles were so revered that killing one was forbidden, and if one was found dead, it was anointed with oil and buried with honor. Life was a continuous conversation with the sacred, a constant performance of respect for the unseen forces that held the power of life, death, and everything in between. The arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century brought a new faith and a worldview that was completely at odds with the animist traditions of the islands. What followed was a dramatic and often brutal period of cultural and religious change. The Spanish missionaries, looking at the native beliefs through the lens of their own religion, didn't see a complex spiritual ecosystem. They saw idolatry and devil worship. The process of colonization included a systematic takedown of the old faith. The anitos and diwatas, once honored as nature spirits and divine guardians, were demonized and recast as servants of Satan. The powerful and respected babaylan were hunted down, branded as witches and heretics, their influence crushed to make way for the new male priesthood. The very language of faith was taken over. The name Bathala, the supreme creator, was eventually made equivalent to the Christian God, and native terms for Lord, like Panginoon, were repurposed for new hymns and prayers. But a belief system that has guided a people for thousands of years doesn't just vanish. It adapts, it blends, it goes underground. This is a process called religious syncretism, and it's one of the defining features of Filipino culture today. The old gods didn't disappear, they just put on new masks. Anitos were often replaced by Catholic saints, with people praying to them for the same things: a good harvest, protection, or healing, transferring the old jobs to new figures. The veneration of ancestors continued in the way Filipinos honor their dead on All Saints' Day, a practice that blends Catholic rites with a deep pre-colonial respect for one's ancestors.